This is going to be interesting.
It is going to be interesting.
And we have some new digs. We were booted out of our last studio because we didn't pay the rent.
Rent not paid. Whose fault is that? Is that my fault? I
That
feel like
was mine. Apparently, I don't know how to pay my bills.
I feel like it was my fault.
Negative ghostwriter.
Oh, positive.
I'm Shannon.
And I'm Mark.
And this is Dirt Sailor, the podcast.
Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
Well, happy Throat Punch Thursday.
How are you doing on this fine day?
I'm doing good now that we're in a new studio.
How do you
really like it. It's fantastic.
I worked really hard to pay the rent and get us a new studio.
Well, 10 square feet is a lot to work with, and you did a fantastic job.
I think we have 10. 2.
4.
8.
6.
Can't math.
That's right.
That's about 2 by 5, so.
It might be kind of late in the afternoon to math, but we're okay.
But we'll math as best as we can math.
As best as we can.
Oh, welcome back.
Welcome back. Nice vacation.
Nice little vacation we had.
So you give me a vacation when I have heart surgery, and you give me a vacation.
We needed a little break. We're revamping. Wanted to invite you guys into a space where we are now doing video as well as audio.
Yes, and please let me know how my makeup looks. If it's too light, then I'll go ahead and have the makeup artist darken it up a little bit. But yeah.
I just go with pasty white.
Yeah, I just go with the 61-year-old lines and look.
Oh, is that the look you're going for?
Wasn't the line I intended to end with when I was 100, but we'll start there.
So, do you want to just jump right in now that we've welcomed everybody to the new digs?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Let's jump right in.
So, one of the big things this week that happened, actually there's several big things, but one of the big things, we're kind of back to talking about the pandemic. And
My favorite guy, Dr. F.
Dr. F word was hauled in front of Congress again. Now, in January, he was brought up in front of Congress to give behind-the-scenes answers. He was not put on, I don't know, I feel like it's a show. It's a display. They all go for their 5 minutes and find out which way they can use it to their advantage. But in his case this time, he was actually brought out in front of Congress, and something that I would like to preempt before talking about Dr. F is the Japanese leader, Kazuhiro Haraguchi, the former Japanese Minister for Internal Affairs, has become the first major politician to apologize to the unvaccinated for the deaths that occurred mostly among the vaccinated population. So the Japanese leader apologized to the unvaccinated, saying, "You were right, vaccines are killing millions of our loved ones." And earlier this week, a huge number of Japanese citizens took to the streets to protest against the crimes against humanity perpetrated by the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, and others during the pandemic. So we had a big Japanese leader who apologized to the Japanese population, and now we have it to where Dr. F word is being hauled in front of Congress to answer for some of those things that he said that we now know are not true.
Did you listen to his lack of taking responsibility for what has happened the last 3 years?
Yes. It was, and he's done that in the past where he'll try to reshape the truth. He doesn't usually outright say, "I never said that," but he tends to have some version of, "I didn't say that," or "my words were taken out of context." And so if you listen to the actual words and some of the questioning that goes on, it does seem to be for political points, whether it's Marjorie Taylor Greene or another individual, right or left leaning, they all seem to try to get in their side of the story. And so we have, as an example, the House Oversight Committee. Rolling Stone magazine called it delving into chaos. Marjorie Taylor Greene causes chaos. And that it's conspiracy theories and people who are perpetuating these conspiracy theories that are going after Fauci. And then you have Blaze Media who will come out and say, let's look at the big lies that Fauci told. So on one hand, we're told that it's all a farce, that it never happened. And, we're so thankful to Dr. F word. And then on the other hand, let's break down the reasons why he was wrong and potentially should be prosecuted.
Well, see, this is that Bill Clinton defense. What's the definition of his?
Or what's the definition of gain of function? So that was a defense that he took some months back. Maybe it's been more than months now. I think it might have happened prior to January. So we're talking last year and the year prior, where they changed the literal definition of gain of function. So that way, when he goes in front of Congress, he gets to say, no, we didn't do gain of function research. I didn't fund anything. The NIH didn't fund it. NIAID didn't fund anything.
And no dogs were killed under my watch.
Right. No, they only surgically took out their vocal cords. Surgically took them out. For those of you who aren't aware, they surgically took out the vocal cords so you didn't have to hear the cries of the dogs as they had them attacked with sand fleas. But that's okay, right?
Well, I guess, and if you look at their perspective as doctors and scientists, doctor, they want to make sure that they're doing studies on non-humans. So to them, in their mind, that justifies it. It's okay if we kill dogs. It's okay if we take out rabbits, mice, cockroaches, whatever you want to kill in the name of science.
As long as it wasn't humans.
As long as it wasn't a human. So in their twisted mind, smart mind, deviant mind, whatever the case may be, they're okay with it. And it's that if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around,
does it make a sound? See, if that would not have been brought up, nobody would know they were testing with dogs. Right, and I think people were more outraged that they were testing with dogs than this was a giant test on the world population.
Yes. And you are, how do I phrase this without, because it still is a clean podcast.
Yes, we are still trying to keep it clean.
I'm going to keep my language, my personal body movements and stuff as professional as possible. But from listening to Fauci speak again, and I have said from day one, 2 years ago-ish, that until we had the empirical data and people started dying and all this stuff comes to fruition, he's going to get away with this stuff. Well, it appeared to me yesterday watching him that he's going to get away with it again. Because you have political theater. You have one side that loves these people no matter what, because they're also gaining function. And by that, I mean they're gaining money from companies. And the other ones need money to win elections. So they will throw the Marjorie Taylor Greene bomb throwing out there. And the other folks will do the no, perfect citizen, best scientist ever, did what he needed to do.
Yes. And part of it, they'll say, well, we didn't know what we didn't know, which is true. So when this first started happening, well, we didn't know what we didn't know, but the scientists who were funding and paying for this gain of function research arguably should have known more because they had been doing the research. So you can't say like they didn't know what they didn't know se on the same.
Here's the 411 for most people around the world, around the United States, and the few that watch us and agree with us, and the many that don't agree with me on all sides of issues. They have known for years what this gain of function was, and that they were doing this testing all over the U.S. and in other countries. And where? Ukraine.
Yes.
Doing gain of function in Ukraine, nuclear type testing, and they were probably testing on real people there because it's out of the country. Doing testing in China, Wuhan, and labs in North Carolina. So this should not be a surprise, and that's why they had to pass a law or a rule that said no more gain of function. So then Dr. Fauci learned how to backdoor that.
Circumvent the
by
law.
Donating money to an organization that could then turn around and donate money to the lab to do testing.
Right, they did the Humpty Dumpty donations.
Yes.
So you do it to somebody you can, and that person pays for somebody else who then turns around and gives it to somebody else, and eventually it gets to where it needs to go. Same thing they do in politics. Is if you can't give all the money, you sparse, give it out to everybody, and then it can collect where you want it to go.
Yes.
And just for our congressmen and women, you also have the apologists. So you have the Marjorie Taylor Greens who go after when it's their turn to go after the person they don't like. And then you have, for this particular case, you have Congressman Raskin calling out Republicans' hostility towards Fauci. And so I'm going to quote, "They are treating you like a convicted felon. Actually, you probably wish they were treating you like a convicted felon. They treat convicted felons with love and admiration. Some of them blindly worship convicted felons." And then he just noted that Green and other Republican lawmakers and how he noted how they had reacted to Trump getting convicted. And so because he was convicted and he's now a felon, but they still support him, they're saying, oh, yeah, if he was a convicted felon, well, I am old enough to remember, and maybe you're old enough to remember too.
Possibly.
A bunch of our Democrat congressmen taking a knee in silence for a convicted felon and raising up other convicted felons and repeatedly talking about praising, donating to convicted felons. So it kind of seems like a problem on both sides of the fence of elevating convicted felons.
It is, and that's a problem with someone like Raskin. Raskin is out for Raskin.
Yes.
And they only parse part of the truth. They don't want to tell the whole truth. Yeah, Trump has a history, long history in business.
Yes.
With the court systems, and we'll get into that in a little while because I got an iPad.
Right, you can scroll.
I have notes. I get to scroll. But the issue is all of the Americans behind the periphery, like you and I and the 300 and some million other that have to jump in line with these people when they're supposed to be there making the best decisions for us, what's in our best interest. And
not their pocketbook's best interest.
Yes. And that's a whole nother sidebar story that we'll get into at a later podcast, is those folks are making way too much money. I'm okay with people making money. It's the American way.
Yes.
Not congressmen and senators. They're getting a good salary, good benefits. All this other stuff that goes along with it needs to stop. We'll talk about that later for sure. And when I say later, I mean podcast or two down the road.
As we should.
Yes.
So something that Fauci laid claim to or said that there was no claim of truthfulness was so there was the lab leak theory. And so that became the lab leak conspiracy theory because it couldn't be a theory. We hypothesize as scientists, or at least that's what I'm told, scientists hypothesize. But the lab leak theory or hypothesis was labeled a conspiracy theory. And so he said, I don't think the concept of there being a lab leak is inherently a conspiracy theory. What is conspiracy is the kind of distortions of that particular subject. Like it was a lab leak and I was parachuted into the CIA like Jason Bourne and told the CIA they shouldn't be talking about a lab leak. Now, he tried to turn it into something just wild and out there. Do you think anyone said he parachuted in like Jason Bourne?
Not one person.
Now, there was a conspiracy surrounding the CIA apparently going in and helping to investigate the theory over in China and what role, Fauci may have played in it and what role the CIA or other acronymed agencies may have played in this.
Why would the CIA or DARPA have to go to China to investigate the lab when they are the very ones partially responsible for asking for that type of testing for bioweapons and such?
Right. If they're the ones that were paying a lab through shell companies or through other companies, if they were paying the lab, why wouldn't they be able to just go in there?
I guarantee all they had to do was text or get on the phone and call the bat lady. hey, how's the testing going? Did we have a mess at the wet market, or did somebody get sick?
Right. What happened? How did it happen? Let's go ahead and do some investigations. But Dr. Deborah Birx is out saying that there was an attempt to stop people from investigating the lab leak theory. And I believe there was even emails to that effect. There were people who said, hey, we should consider this. And then all of a sudden be like, yeah, no, never happened. And then money went into their next research
donation.
Yes. And they're the ones that hold the pocketbook on that. There were, I can't remember the three, it was Fauci and two others that held the purse strings for who was going to get research money. And do you think if they're going against what Fauci wants, they're going to get research funds?
Well, just like congressmen, senators, and the president's limited in serving 2 terms. Congress is not, obviously, so I almost stepped on my own self trying to make a statement that Fauci's been in that business for over 50 years. He should have been tailored back 40 years ago when he started having political leanings and not scientific leanings. Okay, so once his mindset changed and his interest was in politics and not science, as he says.
I am the science.
Yes,
I represent
I am
science.
the science.
Yes.
He should have been shelf life limited.
Well, and a point that I've made before, I believe it was in 2004, they did a payment to Fauci to go over the max salary that he was allowed to have because government officials are typically capped out at a certain level. And they authorized an extra additional payment to him, and I believe it was annually, for him to stop the next pandemic.
Oh, Dr. Failure, Dr. F.
Yeah, so why isn't it that he has to give all that money back? He was supposed to be the foremost expert on this subject. If he's being paid a special stop the next pandemic amount of money, why is it that he is still looked to as the expert after such failings?
I would have listened to other scientists that actually invented the mRNA. And, he said the other day that he invented monoclonal antibodies, or one form of it.
So he gets money.
Yeah, gets $100 a year.
100, yes. Woo-hoo. Yes, for his help in inventing that. And he said that he was not enriched by any vaccine that came out during the pandemic.
That's like a participation award or trophy, $100 a year.
Yeah, you signed off on it, yeah. So you got your participation money.
I don't believe it for a second, because he acts when you rear your veins in your neck and then you start making up stories like parachuting into, China like Jason Bourne, the guy has something to hide.
Right, because you're making this story bigger than it ever could be. Yes. So what you're saying is it's not no. It's definitely not no, but it's not this made up random thing.
And not being a scientist, I do know that there's a chemical portion of your brain that triggers and starts releasing into your bloodstream and causes you to do stuff like that, which is make false and misleading statements.
You mean like your uncle getting eaten by cannibals?
100%.
Okay. But anyway, back to, let's keep on with some of the research that has come out. So we were so quick to run a vaccine and so quick to get it out to people. Now, vaccines have been around for a very long time. So talking about the definition of what's the definition of vaccine? They actually changed the definition of vaccine to call the mRNA a vaccine. They had to change the definition in order for people, this is what the scientists were saying, not me, in order for people to be more accepting. Because if they said this is something we've never really done before and we're really hopeful for it, would you have gotten it? Versus this is a vaccine. And we've had vaccines for diseases like this before. Would you please get this one? So which one are you more likely to get? And I don't mean you personally. I just meant to the masses.
To the masses.
If you said, hey, this is something we've never done before, you want to do it? No. Anyway, so let's talk about a major study update on mRNA. They have pulled They have pulled 1 million cases. 1 million cases. And this was of English children. And they were children between the ages of 5 and 11, and then another group looking at 12 to 15.
Okay.
So the study compared vaccinated and unvaccinated subjects. The researchers also took into account the number of doses each child had, 1, 2, so on and so forth.
Multiples, yes.
So in detailing their findings, and mind you, I want to let you know that this is out of Oxford, University of Oxford. So this is not Podunk College and somebody who doesn't have a good enough degree.
It's not from a junior college.
It's not from Dirt Sailor Shannon and her statistical analysis of,
flipping through Google.
Google scrolls. So anyway, and the researchers took the vaccine numbers into account, and detailing their findings, the researchers wrote, all myocarditis and pericarditis events during the study period occurred in vaccinated individuals. The study also noted that hospitalization related to COVID-19 was extremely rare among children and adolescents. The English data does show that myocarditis and pericarditis were only recorded in vaccinated children and adolescents. The vast majority of myocarditis and pericarditis cases occurred after the first dose of the vaccine, according to the study, and over half of the adolescents who suffered from conditions visited a hospital as a result.
Over half, that's 50%?
Over 50% ended up hospitalized after getting the vaccine. Not 50% of all vaccinated children. 50% of the children who had the myocarditis and pericarditis.
Okay.
Yes. So we're not talking 500,000 children, because it studied 1 million. But so these are some of America's best researchers also looking into these studies, because they want to, just because a study gets put out, you need to look at it, evaluate it, see if it was done in the back of a basement by somebody without the real credentials,
Right.
somebody who has an interest.
It's like a pasta noodle that you throw against a wall and make sure it sticks. You have to check over time to make sure that it's a legitimate study and it holds its own weight.
Yeah, so even here in the U.S., where they're studying the soaring sudden deaths around the world, so we're in the U.S. studying, well, I'm sure everybody's studying everything, but we're studying why deaths are going up. The UK is coming out and saying, hey, we're seeing that children were given heart conditions after these vaccines. Not all of them have died, thank goodness, and I hope that we can recover from this. But the myocarditis, the pericarditis, there was something that we didn't know, that they didn't know when they gave us these shots. Or maybe they did know. Maybe this is just how we reduce population.
Population control?
Well, that's a conspiracy theory. We'll wait to see if that one's
true.
true.
No, I'm not saying that's what happened.
But we have so much research coming out, empirical data, as you would say. So stuff coming out of England, stuff coming out of the U.S.
Japan.
Stuff coming out of Japan. And then when you go to Dr. F and you said, would you do anything different? I would think a normal person would respond with something to the effect of, knowing what I know now, I wish we would have done X, Y, and Z. And he just said, no, I would have done the same thing. I would have masked 2-year-olds.
You know what that is? Either a narcissist or a sociopath.
Can he be both? I studied that once in college, but I can't remember if you can be both.
If he has multiple personality disorder, he
one
could
is
have
one
both.
and one is the other.
One is one and one is the other. Yes. Well, here we go with the many statements we made about empirical data, and everything will eventually bear fruit. Unfortunately, it's the wrong kind of fruit we want to bear, because yes, us and me watching Dr. Campbell over in England follows all these studies, and when he finds that there's one that's wrong or he's been misled, he corrects the record. He comes out and corrects the record and say, no, this is what the truth is about that particular article.
Well, and I want to talk about what you've brought up over and over again with regard to your expertise in your work site. How many trainings you have received over the years, how many intern after you've been trained, that it's a train the trainer situation, you turn around and you're training your trainees, so to speak. How many years of information and data has been stored in that brain? How many terabytes are in that brain?
Lots.
that over time you come out and say, hey, I'm a simpleton. I'm a simple guy. You like to say that. I'm a simple guy. But when I learned about masks, I learned there's a certain mask for a certain job.
One mask does not fit all.
Right. And that depending on what you're doing, you may need to be specifically fitted for a specialized mask.
100%. And you have people with these mustaches,
beards,
mutton chops, all the above.
So, and then women who wear, the hijab with the niqab, like your hijab can come down so far. And if you're trying to get your mask on and it gets over, you do have to worry about that. There were times, there was a time, I'm not saying it's a religious thing. I was going to the grocery store. I had to wear a mask. It was raining outside. So I put a scarf over my head. So I had like this scarf going. I had a mask going. And then I was buying something, you had to be over the age of 21. So if you want to get cold medicine, if you want to get alcohol, if you want to get cigarettes, they will ID you. And the person's like, you need to take off your mask. And I'm like, wait, I thought that wasn't safe.
Yeah, it's unsafe. Why would I do that?
Why would I do that? So, and I understand all you could see was my eyes. And like, would you tell a religious person, I'm sorry, you need to take off your hijab and your niqab? Like, would you do that?
That's why I've made statements on multiple occasions with our past president and Operation Warp Speed and what we're finding out with the vaccines, that if they could not make this felonization, I don't know if that's a word, but I just made it up.
Ooh, felonization.
Yes, of Donald Trump, they would have gone after him for this. And I said that many a times, that they will blame him for the vaccine failures. And they also blame him for not creating them and being more serious during the initial stage of the pandemic.
Right, because he was on video, on recording. Everybody saw him say or heard him say that, just give it a month, it'll blow over. Just let it go. Just short time later, I'll be fine.
And a conspiracy, if it wouldn't have been election year cycle, maybe it would have just
blown over.
Or it wouldn't have happened at all.
Things would have been different if he... Well, okay, let's see. If Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, and many, many other Dr. Collins? Is it Collins? If all of the doctors, they're the same doctors advising him that were advising Biden. Operation Warp Speed, I'm pretty sure they didn't go in and fire everybody who was rolling out the vaccines and all of that. So is it Trump's fault? Is it Biden's fault? Or is it the people that are really running the show behind the scenes fault?
It's Trump's fault for not taking the deep state more seriously.
He probably thought he got it with getting rid of the political types, not realizing how deep state is. Yeah. So Trump, we've seen him in the news a lot lately. So he was found guilty of nearly 36 counts in New York. So I would just like our listeners, our viewers, to note that no federal crime could be charged by the state prosecution. So there were no actual federal charges for him to get prosecuted under. The Federal Elections Commission had actually investigated all of this information and found that nothing was particularly noteworthy. But Alvin Bragg decided that he was going to bring a charge against Trump, a felony charge. And he openly stated over and over again that was his goal. So it didn't matter what it was that he was going to do. And he was going to get Trump. He said that he was going to get Trump in 2021. So in the world of rigging, Was that trial rigged?
In my humble opinion, 100%.
So when you go to Manhattan to file charges, because they got to pick the venue, right? Why was it Alvin Bragg? It was a state. Are the only state charges that can happen there in Manhattan? So they filed charges in a district where Trump won a very teeny tiny amount of votes. Like, he was not liked at all in that area. And so you have this whole district. That's all of the voters that they're going to go for are not voters and non-voters alike that are going to be the jury of his so-called peers. So when the prosecutor was swearing in 2021 that he was going to go after Donald Trump, another form of rigging, when the judge gave money to a Stop Trump group, when the judge's daughter makes money off of Democratic activism, when the judge apparently gives jury instructions that says you don't really actually have to agree on exactly what the crime was, you just individually have to think that he committed a crime, and therefore you'll be unanimous.
Just throw a dart, even if it doesn't hit the
happens.
dartboard. Just see what happens. We'll find him guilty of something or all charges. It was a ridiculous, made-up trial. He knows it. The defense knows it. Trump knows it. And the rest of the world knows it. We have now become no better than Central and South America. Not saying the people down there aren't phenomenal people. The politics are corrupt.
Yeah, jail your opponent.
That is how they handle things, or they give them house arrest so they can't go out and run for office.
Right, and in this case, he got a version of house arrest.
Yes, gag order, and he had to be at the trial every single day. Here's the thing. This is going to have to go all the way to the Supreme Court, because the appellate court there in Manhattan
is going to side
with the judge. Then the next step there is going to side with him, so he's going to have to take it all the way to the
right,
top.
because the jurisdictions that it's going to are all left-leaning.
That's why there should have been a change of venue, and that's why I've always had an issue with jury trials. Not a lawyer, not a judge. Never been on a jury, been down there in a jury pool waiting, but nothing's happened. The very statement you made a minute ago, a jury of his peers. Well, a plumber, an electrician, a hotel worker, custodian are not his peers.
Yeah, when they say peers, it's 18 and over, U.S. citizen.
Yes, a jury of your peers should be what? Business owners, politicians, professionals, people that have been and are currently in the same realm that he's in. That is your peer. Okay, number one. Number two, you cannot take people as jurors and have them listen to attorneys and judges that are trained, that have done this lingo. It's a whole different language that they
spend
speak.
3+ years in college to learn legalese.
And then ask them to make a decision that they can actually mentally understand as it relates and is applicable to what the man's being charged with. Because if you look at all 38 felonies or whatever it is, that's like 400 years in prison or whatever this ridiculous number is for a charge that actually the statute of limitations ran out. And like you said, the Elections Commission looked at it, nothing to see here.
Right.
Bragg originally made the statement, I'm not going to prosecute that. There's nothing here. And Alan Dershowitz, who's probably one of the smartest attorneys in the entire U.S., has said, this is a no-brainer. So it's 100% political. And stuff like this should not happen in this country since we're, quote, a nation of laws, and that's what's supposed to separate us from the banana republics.
Unfortunately, they decided to take something that if he had done a federal elections commission violation, if he had violated something, the Fed should have gone after him. If you look, they have gone after people in the past. They went after Obama. He had illegal campaign contributions, and he had to work that out. I believe Hillary Clinton did too. And others have gone through that same thing. So if they had believed there was something there, they would have made Trump pay. Like handily, because they are the same people that went after all of these others. And there were other Republicans that have been shown to be wrong in the past too. But with that, they also not just had the statute of limitations run out, they also turned a misdemeanor into a felony.
Which tells you it's political.
Right, because they would have gone after a misdemeanor if they really believed it. And I know my simpleton brain trying to get my head around everything that they charged and how they went after him. If it was to influence the election, it didn't work in New York. New York went for, at 2016, went for Clinton. Clinton was a senator from New York, too. She had home field advantage because she was the wife of a former governor in Arkansas. And then later on in her political career, she was a senator from New York. She represented New York. It's a very Democrat place. She won New York. Trump did not win New York. So, assuming that what he did was to influence the election, he did a terrible job at it. And if you want to look, Payne didn't, 2004, Edwards. Didn't Edwards pay off like a baby mama? Or like a girlfriend that he had in the campaign?
He actually used campaign money.
Funds. And he didn't get any like election tampering, or I believe he just had to pay it back. I'll have to look that one up. Yep. But it's using campaign funds wrongfully, whether it's to pay off a lover or not. He paid out of his own funds. And yet it was pointed out that millions of dollars have been paid to pay off very similarly situated circumstances within the federal government, within our congressmen and women. And the government has paid those claims. Mm-hmm. So what does it matter if he wants to go back? And he's still not saying that they had a thing. But what does it matter if you want to go back and say, hey, will you keep this quiet? Here's some money. Hey, will you keep this quiet? Here's some money.
So what do they call those?
Is that
NDA?
Yes, she had a non-disclosure agreement.
Non-disclosure agreement.
And then if you look back in the history, the attorney, what was his name? He ended up going to jail for lying. And then he was a star witness in the Trump.
Michael Cohen?
Cohen, thank you. So Cohen at one point said, Trump knew nothing about this. I did it of my own volition. Like I was doing it to help out. Trump actually told me not to do it. He said, this stuff's going to come out anyway. Lo and behold, he now says, oh no, Trump knew and he made me do it. He knew what I was doing. He was a part of it. And you go back into another version of his history, which is I will say anything that will get me out of trouble.
Of course, he wants to destroy others and make himself shine.
And he admitted that he stole from Trump while he was working for Trump. So this is someone who helped to convict Trump.
That's why. Hopefully that alone will help this thing get overturned. I mean, granted, he still has many other uphill battles.
Right. He has, well, South Carolina, they're looking at, Georgia, they're looking at Fani Willis. And there's going to be a little mini trial or whatever to see if she should recuse herself.
Wasn't it interesting how every venue that is trying him or wants to try him for something, they have their own skeletons in their own closet, but they keep looking beyond them and saying, nah, nothing to see here. We're going to go ahead and prosecute. We're just going to keep going.
Yeah. Oh, and then with, this is a Trump and a Biden thing. They both get investigated for taking classified documents. We find out with Trump that the FBI actually brought cover sheets that didn't match anything.
Quote, tampered with evidence.
They tampered with the evidence. They made it appear that there was something there. They just pinned these covers, the top secret, whatever, to random documents. And we are supposed to now go after Trump for all of his illegal wrongdoings of having classified documents. And then we have Mr. Herr, who interviews Biden over his classified documents and basically says he's an old feeble man and he's so sympathetic that nobody's probably going to convict him. Okay, but it's literally doing the same thing, but we didn't see his house raided. He had documents spread across the country. And then it turns out that they won't release the audio tapes of the interview between Biden and her. And they said, oh, but the transcript should be enough. The transcripts are here.
Transcript is probably missing and redacted.
Apparently it's been altered to make Biden look better.
Of course it has.
So the transcripts were altered. So they're like, hey, no, release the real ones because now you're admitting that you altered them. It was
they'll get lost. They'll inadvertently get shredded. They'll burn.
Something will happen.
Oh, it was deleted. There's always something that happens.
Yeah, so we get told that Robert Herr interviewing Joe Biden is nothing to see here. Oh, I'm not a feeble old man, but here's some transcripts that had to be altered to favor me.
I just don't know how one party over the other has gotten so strong.
That they can do that.
And the other one can't defend themselves, it seems like. Or do they want to? Maybe they just want to be second on the bus. I don't know.
Is it like when you're trying to be friends with the cool kids and no matter what you do, they string you along, but they won't ever actually let you sit at their table?
There's a rap song about being the passenger in a car.
Passenger side of your best friend's ride?
Yes. And it's an interesting song. So when was Donald Trump born? Do you know? Let's go into a little history about Donald in New York.
Oh, let's see. I'm going to say in the early 50s? Late 40s.
Late 40s, 1946.
Oh, okay. I guess I should have mathed better.
It's interesting that just in the last week, he was found guilty and he's now a felon. And Wikipedia immediately
updates their page
on the history of Donald Trump. I'm not going to get into the specifics of his Bachelor of Science in Economics degree. I'm not going to get into his father's name or what he did in the organization, but he actually started out as a realtor, Trump's dad, and then Trump went to work for him, and then they kind of merged, and Trump took over, and he rebranded and renamed it to Trump Organization. Do you know from 2014 to 2015, he co-produced and hosted the reality television series The Apprentice. And they're actually saying that's where he made a bulk of his money.
It was from The Apprentice?
I don't know how you can own multiple skyscrapers and superstructures, but you made all your money.
You made it big on a TV show. 2 years before, a year or two before you run for president.
However, he and his businesses have been plaintiffs or defendants in more than 4,000 legal actions.
That doesn't look good for him.
Including 6 bankruptcies.
Because doesn't he have like sub companies or sub organizations?
Yes, and he's done nothing different than any other corporation does when they start having financial difficulties. They try to raise money. They try to right the business. If the business doesn't right, they file bankruptcy as a corporation,
right?
Not as an individual. That's why in multiple spots in this Wikipedia article, it talks about how he's never had to file personal bankruptcy. He's never had to file. Well, he's not supposed to. He does business as corporations.
It's a corporation.
He is a corporate business owner. They do go into what a bad person he is. His early life was terrible. His health habits are terrible. His religion is His wealth, don't believe him because he's worth this, but he's really not. He's worth that, but he's really not.
So if you want to think about it, part of that worth is tied to what somebody would actually pay for either the businesses or the properties. And so if you go around to all the land and say, oh, I would never pay $1 billion for that building, or I would never pay $100 million for that property, or I would never give him $3 million for that random little business he owns over there. Part of that is also with regard to how the market's doing. Okay, market's way up, houses are way up. commercial properties are way up. Great. He looks on paper like he's worth a whole lot of money. Right now, we're seeing a lot go down with the commercial real estate, so it's going to look like he has less.
Right.
It doesn't mean that he's, just don't believe him. Okay, last year he was worth, somebody could, look at their net worth, and last year they could be worth $3 billion. And then this year, they're still saying $3 billion because that's the last time they looked up their net worth, and they don't realize how much their market share has tanked or how much commercial has tanked.
And Elon Musk's net worth just declined a little bit because of all the issues right now with Tesla and other business dealings.
He's the richest person. He's the not richest person. He's the richest person. He's a not. So that stuff happens all the time. And if you look at every day, the market goes up or down, or sometimes, might etch out.
It's just like buying commodities, precious metals, and steel. Market goes up, they cost more. Market goes down, they cost less. So the companies that own the steel and the precious metals, their net worth goes up, their net worth goes down.
Right.
But what I want to drive at with this is, what is the difference between this and our federal government handing out money to solar companies and other businesses, picking winners?
Right, picking the winners and losers.
Yes. And they fail, but there's no accountability to the representative or the president or the vice president or the department head that gave them all that cash.
Yes. There's no, so you look at Solyndra, they went down. They almost right after they got hundreds of millions of dollars. And I believe it was the former CEO of Solyndra that was just given a big old company, and he got another set of millions from the government.
Well,
after running away with his millions before.
You put the two men side by side, Donald Trump, Joe Biden. Look at the sum total of their parts. Do you want a guy that, whether he's had ups and downs, has proven he can be a successful business owner? At one point in time, he was the 1,438th richest man in the world. Okay, Joe Biden cannot.
Pretty big on a billions of people.
Joe Biden cannot stake that claim.
No.
Okay, he has proven, he being Trump, that he can run a country and do things that make the citizens better.
Yes.
He may have increased the debt. He may have had to threaten other countries, but he made it work. Has Joe Biden done that? No. He's not done none of that throughout his career. None of it. So, no, I'm not pitching for Trump. Let's go vote for Trump today. What I'm saying is you got to look at the two.
Right. There are good, and there's good and bad in everyone. There's no one's perfect. We're not going to find someone here in the United States to be the perfect president. It does not exist. But if you want to look at all the bad of Trump, that his companies have declared bankruptcy, that he's a convicted felon, that they're going after him in these other states for these other crimes that they claim that he commits. Do you want to support a man who talks about his uncle getting eaten by cannibals? Do you want to support a man that can't walk up a flight of stairs, that they actually have to change how he gets onto the plane?
The plagiarist.
A man that plagiarized, a man that lied about his degree. Because, hey, I got my law degree. Doesn't matter if you are in first place or last place. Did you pass? Yes. Did you pass and get your degree? Yes. So it doesn't matter. I think he was sixth from the bottom. Whatever. He got his law degree. But then he has to go out and say, oh, I got multiple degrees. Oh, I was in the top of my class. Oh, I did this. Oh, I did that. And he lie. The Ashley Biden diary scandal. So in her diary, which apparently now has been authenticated, we couldn't say it was authenticated before, but it's been authenticated. She talks about her father forcing her to shower with him.
Sick man.
She doesn't have to be the only, she obviously didn't intend to come out in public and say this. Her diary was taken and ultimately published. after there were claims that it wasn't hers and it was hers and then maybe hers. A couple got convicted for stealing it and attempting to hawk it to OMG. He now owns OMG because he got kicked out of Project Veritas. He was ousted. His name is escaping me right now. Brain is failing. But anyway, you can watch him on video.
O'Keefe.
Oh, yes, James O'Keefe. Thank you. You can watch Biden on video over and over again, inappropriately touching girls and women. Over and over. You can look at the accusations that were timely accusations against him. And in some cases, you can call them untimely if you want to look at the same thing like E. Jean Carroll, how Trump was prosecuted for talking out about E. Jean Carroll. Biden says nothing ever happened with Tara Reade, and the government refuses to release the contemporaneous documents to support or disprove her claim. But there is Tara Reade's mother actually called into a CNN show to get advice because her daughter was working on Capitol Hill and had an inappropriate situation happen. Do you have any advice? CNN commentator. And that was contemporaneous to it actually happening. So there's proof kind of going with that along with others. And there are bad things about both people.
So what you're saying is they're both habitual liars.
Yes.
They both embellish.
Yes.
They make things up.
Yes.
They both have done things sexual and non-sexual in the past.
Yes.
So they both should be held accountable equally.
Yes.
So that's why the little scales of justice actually sit parallel to one another, correct? So they're supposed to be equal across the board.
Yes.
But one party over the other has figured out how to manipulate the system and make themselves appear better than what they are.
Right. So you can say, oh, well, Biden doesn't have a felony. Yes, because they won't prosecute him. Somebody's not going to have a felony if you refuse to prosecute. Somebody's not going to have multiple court cases if you refuse to prosecute.
Well, just think if Hunter Biden's case wasn't in Delaware.
Right. And it wasn't going to be
Right.
where
And it was in a red state.
Yes.
Okay. Then the prosecutor of that case could go to Biden and say, look, I'll make this one go away. You make all the other ones go away. Let's do a quid pro quo, Joe,
Yes.
for each other.
We'll help each other out. And if you looking at Hunter Biden, he has multiple issues and he almost got away with his past crimes. And his plea deal said I believe it was future crimes or crimes not discussed, something of that nature. They gave him a plea deal that many a prosecutor and defense attorneys alike said they've never seen before. And in fact, the judge wouldn't accept it because the judge said, I have never seen something like this before. And in fact, she or he, I can't remember if it was a she or he, but they said, what in the living HE double hockey sticks? I've never even seen anything remotely like that. And the judge, so only 1% of cases actually go to a jury trial. 99% of cases are pled out. So if a judge who prior to their judgeship worked in the courts and, was a prosecutor or defense, I don't know that that's the case, but they have seen deal after deal after deal. So for them to say, I've never seen anything like that, that tells me that we do have that two-tiered justice system. So ultimately, Biden and his attorneys get called out. And so now he has the gun charge that they're going after him in Delaware, which is his dad's home state. That's where his dad spent how many decades as a senator?
As a senator.
He was one of the youngest to get elected too.
Well, so he's going to be afforded protection by Joe's power. And I believe you and I talked about this many, many weeks ago. How do you take a guy that's a habitual liar? He's a little mini sociopath. I'm not talking about Hunter. I'm talking about his dad. And he's gotten away with all this stuff. And he's been able to talk his way into one of the most powerful positions in the entire world.
Right. So what is it going to be? What's that going to do? What is going to happen to Hunter Biden, and what's going to happen to the Joe Biden of the future?
It's going to get him an easy peasy trial, and they're going to find him probably not guilty.
Yeah, they have already sat the jury, and so that jury selection went much quicker than what Trump's went for, and I believe they've already started opening arguments, and they're going on with the case. And they listed out, we don't have names, nor should we have names of the jurors. We have juror numbers and some of the questions that they either said yes to or no to. And many of them either own guns, know somebody who was affected by gun violence, including close relatives, drug addiction, know somebody who was affected, close relative, by drug addiction. And so now you have, I guess you could say you have peers because they are former drug addicts or people who are related to former drug addicts or current drug addicts, as it were, and people who were affected by gun violence, people who currently own guns, and that's who's seated on the jury right now to decide if he wrongfully obtained or lied on the form. Now, I will say, if you're going to commit a crime, go all the way to trial. Take it all the way.
Absolutely.
Don't ever admit guilt. And that's what he's doing. Never admit guilt. Because he did lie. You know it. I know it. Everybody who looks at that. I don't care if you say, oh, but he was a drug addict.
Well,
It
he
doesn't matter.
learned to lie earnestly from his dad.
Yeah.
It's a learned trait. He watched his dad tell whoppers. So he did the exact same thing. Don't blame him for that.
Yeah, don't blame him for doing what he's always been.
Because I think we've seen a
shown to
situation
do.
around us where somebody we might know has picked up some bad habits from somebody,
And it does not turn into.
does not
a
end
good
well sometimes.
no.
It's not a good situation.
No.
Well, looking at our country as a whole, and the fact that you can't say certain things because then people that listen to your podcast are going to perceive that as violence, or
Yes.
as Trump does when he gives a speech and somebody says, wait a minute, those are code words. Those are buzzwords for
coded language for you to go out.
And all of that is a bunch of governmental made up crud.
Yes.
Okay? Because the man has a history. He's in his early 70s. He's never shown a propensity to push for violence.
Right.
Contrary, I think the man loves this country. But what's happening here, in my humble opinion, is our federal government, through certain individuals, is trying to drive us towards a potential civil war. And I don't say that lightly.
It does feel like that at times, just the way that we're continually pushed.
This election cycle means a lot. It means a lot for everybody in this country. It even means a lot for the people that have come here illegally or have been given free gratis and they've just opened the border for them. They even have some of their little mini leaders saying, wait a minute, this is why we left Guatemala. This is why we left Central and South America and Mexico, to get away from a tyrannical government. And I don't believe it's Trump that wants to be a dictator. I believe we already have a mini dictator in office currently.
Yeah, well, we have, I believe Joe Biden has put in the highest number of little dictates that any president has ever put in. And he continues to put in. And in fact, this week we see him put in ones for the border saying that he's going to, I do forget the terms that he used, but it's going to be like a 7-day rolling number of people. You have to go through a legal, lawful port of entry to claim asylum.
Well,
and depending on how many people we have in a rolling 7-day period, they'll put stops on it.
Like a bunch of people have said, too little, too late.
I thought we didn't have a problem.
We have laws. Should have never done it from the get-go.
I thought we didn't have a problem. If we didn't have a problem, why do you have to do anything?
Well,
why do you have to stop people?
This is the 4-year election trigger. They want to do that. He wants to do away with some student debt. He wants to promise all this stuff to what? A voting bloc.
Right.
So he can get them to vote for him so he can get in office again. And then this time, Kamala or whoever's the VP under him
Can take over.
will end up taking over. There's no doubt in anybody's mind.
Yeah, I will admit my surprise. I did not think that we would see a Biden presidency last all the way to an end of term. I know we're not at the end of term yet, but they're giving him some good meds.
Right.
Whatever
Nor did
they're
I.
giving
And
him.
that's an issue that the Trump team has asked for during
During the
debate.
debates, they said they want him drug tested because you shouldn't be able to take drugs that are more than necessary for a normal human to
100%.
function. And also they've demanded that it not be in front of a live audience.
Yes. And there had something to do with the questions as well, too, that you're not able to teleprompt the questions. There are some weird rules. Anyway, let me get back to Civil War. It's very unfortunate that we would be even close to this point, but I'm not the expert in this field. If you listen to all the pundits, okay, and I'll throw two of them out there. One of them is Tucker Carlson. Now, half the country may think he's looped and he's not very smart. The other half knows that he has a CIA background from his father because his father was CIA, and he's in the know. And he just made a statement 2 days ago on Sean Ryan's podcast that we're closer than we've ever been. Sean Ryan was SEAL Team 6, former CIA operator, has seen some stuff. Comments like that are coming from him that we're in a time right now that he has not seen.
Well, they've been able to pit us against each other very well. And they say, that you can pick up, women's rights. If you vote for Trump, you don't support women. Biden's the only one who cares about people, and Trump has a very uncaring heart and all of this stuff. But after Roe v. Wade was overturned and it was given back to the states, that has been the biggest hammer, I would say, that they were using. That if you want bodily autonomy, they're going to start chasing you down in other states if you try to drive across state lines and get any sort of women's care, medical care. They're going to arrest you. And that's already been put out. Those are commercials that are out already. If you look at what's happening on the college campuses, so we went from Roe v. Wade, and now a very big point of contention is pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. And that has been a very big dividing point too. Especially college campuses seems to be the big place that it happens. And there were a lot of individuals who openly state anti-Jewish sentiments. And they feel empowered to do so. So much so that Jewish students were leaving their colleges for fear of safety. They've been threatened, they've been attacked, they've been stopped. And I understand, this is a world away. Palestine, Israel, that's a world away. Does it affect us? Obviously. Does it affect individual people? Absolutely. But why is it that that's turned into such a big thing that it's another point where we just go after each other? And we see attacks. We see burning down.
I think like tribalism over in the Middle East, I think our government feeds off of that, and they like having us as separate groups to keep us apart. And just a quick sidebar thing, kind of along the same lines, but I saw our president on television telling Israel and Netanyahu, it's time to stop this war. It's time for peace. Wait a minute.
Why don't you tell the person who started the war that it's time for peace?
100%. Why don't you tell the Hamas time to go?
Right. Hey, Hamas, you started this war. It's time for a peace agreement.
But wait a minute, though. Far more civilians, far more military have been killed in Ukraine, and now the outskirts of Russia, than even close to what's happened in Israel. Yet we're pumping them full of money and weapons. Why?
Yeah, why are we supporting Ukraine more than we're supporting Israel? Now, I know we have been supporting Israel. Obviously, we've given weapons and cash, but then they go and they build a structure to bring aid.
Failed structure.
A floating structure. They build a structure to bring aid to Gaza, and it's a multi-million-dollar structure, and it fails.
Hopefully that wasn't my CBs that built that. It was the Army Corps of Engineers. No, I'm just kidding.
I certainly hope it wasn't the Seabees.
Yeah.
Don't give them a bad name. But to your point, why we are picking the winners and losers. Why are you telling the victim of an attack that they need to cease fire? They need to be the ones to wrap this up. When in fact, prior to October 7th, they were at a ceasefire and Israel was giving concessions for them to have more people to come in, for them to get more work permits, for more things to happen in a positive direction in Palestine. And that was used by Hamas to infiltrate Israel and commit an act of genocide.
And it's amazing how all that works, because you look at the Hamas leaders and they were hiding in another country in a 5-star hotel while they direct the ground troops, their little minions, to go slaughter women and children. I just find it perplexing, big word, that Israel, the IDF forces, can push this group to one area, which is a city called Rafah. They have them choked down to where, hey, we got X amount of people left. All we got to do is take care of them. And this Hamas problem is solved for quite a few years. And then right away, our government and others come sliding in there. Whoa, 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 whoa.
You can't do this.
You can't do that. Why?
Yeah, what's going on?
What's behind the scenes? What's really going on here? Who knows?
Right. And I was going through some of my old information that I've collected over the last few years, and I had friends that would give information about what's going on in Israel, but it was dated pre-October 7th. So this was October 7th, wasn't known about, wasn't talked about because it wasn't a thing. At least it was for Hamas, but not for everybody else. And they would talk about how the Palestinian people felt so sorry for the Jewish population that they didn't have a place that they can go and they were homeless. So they invited them in as a nice thing to do. And over time, the Jewish population overtook their land and stole it from them. And now they're colonizers. The end. And that is why you should support only Palestine. I'm pretty sure there's some historical markers that prove that they lived in the land before.
100%. And I think there's a lot of Palestinians living in Jordan. So they could go to Jordan, and they would go to Egypt if Egypt would open the door for them.
The Great Wall of Egypt.
Yes, but they don't want them in for one reason or the other. I'm not there. I'm not a historian. I don't know why.
Well, I think they're tribal enough that they want to support a fellow Muslim, but they're not so tribal to get outside of their own specific tribe. In addition, I believe it was in the late 60s or early 70s that there were a bunch of Palestinian refugees that were accepted in other countries, I want to say in Jordan, and then they attempted to assassinate
that's appreciation for you.
The leader of Jordan.
That's appreciation for you right there.
Yeah, it's some appreciation assassination.
Appreciate the assassinate. Well, I really like this chair. I really like the studio. I like the background. I'm right in the middle there, down 60 feet diving. So if you look real close through the camera,
you can see the bubbles.
You can see my bubbles. Probably won't be seeing bubbles like that ever again in my life, but you can look at them now.
This has been a podcast produced and edited by the Dirt Sailor Duo. Mark and Shannon are a father-daughter team who both served in the United States Navy. This production is protected by copyright laws. Until next time, anchors away.